March 20th, 2003. The United States, along with a coalition of allies, launched an invasion of Iraq, a conflict that would come to define much of the early 21st century. Officially, the reasoning was clear: to disarm Iraq of weapons of mass destruction, to end Saddam Hussein's regime, and to spread democracy. But was this the real motivation behind the war? Or was there something deeper, something hidden? The Iraq War has been one of the most hotly debated conflicts in modern history. Some argue it was a justified intervention. Others claim it was an illegal war based on lies. In today's video, we're going to peel back the layers and explore the real motivations behind the Iraq War. Let's start with what we were told. The people of the United States and our friends and allies will not live at the mercy of an outlaw regime that threatens the peace with weapons of mass murder. The Bush administration framed the invasion as a necessary step to protect the world from the threat of Saddam Hussein's supposed weapons of mass destruction, or WMDs. Intelligence agencies around the world presented reports suggesting Iraq had the capability to deploy chemical, biological, and possibly nuclear weapons. But as history would later reveal, those WMDs were never found. So if WMDs were not the true threat, what were the other reasons? To understand this, we need to dig deeper into a mix of geopolitical strategy, oil interests, and a push for regional dominance. Iraq is home to the fifth largest oil reserves in the world. Some analysts argue that oil was a key factor driving US interests in the region. Iraq's strategic importance wasn't just about its oil, but its position in the Middle East, a region that has been central to global energy markets for decades. Before the invasion, Iraq was under heavy sanctions, limiting its ability to export oil. But control over Iraq's oil resources could help the US and its allies maintain influence over global oil prices and, in turn, the world economy. Though the Bush administration repeatedly denied that oil was a motivation for war, critics say the facts point in a different direction. The Middle East, with two-thirds of the world's oil and the lowest cost, is still where the prize ultimately lies. Cheney's connections to Halliburton, an oil services company that profited immensely from contracts in Iraq, only added fuel to this theory. While it may not have been just about oil, there's no denying its importance in the broader geopolitical calculus. Beyond oil, another motivation cited by historians and analysts is the US desire to reshape the Middle East politically. After 9/11, the Bush administration adopted a strategy that went beyond mere retaliation. It was about reshaping the entire region to prevent future terrorist threats. Many members of the Bush administration, including influential figures like Donald Rumsfeld and Paul Wolfowitz, were advocates of the Project for the New American Century. They believed in spreading democracy and US influence across the globe, starting with the Middle East. Iraq was a point of leverage for creating a better, safer, more democratic Middle East. But was this idealistic vision just a cover for more strategic ambitions? Some argue that Iraq's invasion wasn't just about spreading democracy, but about securing US dominance in the region, particularly as a counterweight to Iran. Saddam Hussein was no stranger to US foreign policy. In 1991, during the Gulf War, the US chose to leave Saddam in power after liberating Kuwait. But Saddam's survival was a thorn in the side of the Bush family legacy. Some historians have speculated that personal motivations played a role. Did George W. Bush seek to finish what his father started by toppling Saddam once and for all? While personal motives are difficult to quantify, the shadow of the Gulf War and the unfinished business of Saddam's regime loomed large over Washington. Perhaps the most controversial element of the Iraq War is the role of intelligence, or as some say, manipulated intelligence. In 2003, Secretary of State Colin Powell presented evidence to the United Nations that Iraq had active WMD programs. But much of this intelligence was later discredited, and questions arose about whether the administration had cherry-picked data to justify a predetermined war. The Downing Street memo, leaked in 2005, seemed to confirm the worst fears of critics, that the Bush administration had already decided to invade Iraq and was simply shaping the intelligence to fit the agenda. The intelligence and facts were being fixed around the policy. The Iraq War lasted nearly 9 years, claimed hundreds of thousands of lives, and cost trillions of dollars. The power vacuum left by Saddam's removal contributed to the rise of ISIS, and the region remains unstable to this day. Whether the war was motivated by oil, power, personal vendettas, or the genuine belief in spreading democracy, the consequences of the Iraq War are undeniable. It's a war that will be debated by historians, political analysts, and the public for decades to come. So what were the real motivations behind the Iraq War? The truth, as with many historical events, is likely a mix of all these factors. But one thing is clear: the Iraq War reshaped the world in ways that we are still grappling with today. The legacy of the Iraq War is still being written. And while we may never know the full story, understanding the motivations behind it is key to understanding the world we live in today.